Hey, everybody. Let's talk about another support for having difficult conversations. This one is something I've been referring to as checking the engagement dials, and it's by Monica Guzman. And she wrote about this in a book called I Never Thought of It That Way. And I actually do recommend the whole book, I Never Thought of It That Way by Monica Guzman. It's a great book. If you have the time, check that one out. But this is one particular piece that I wanted to lift out and share with you. The conversation sort of support models that we've been looking at so far have had a lot to do with how to have the conversation, either with the person that you agree with or the person that you disagree with. This one is more about whether to have the conversation. So not how, but should I? Think about the 5 things on the screen: time, attention, parity, containment, embodiment, as 5 different sort of scales that you might look at. How much time do I have? How much attention do I have, etc. And the idea here is not that you have to be perfect on all 5 of these things in order to go ahead and have a complicated conversation. The idea here is that you want to make sure that you're doing pretty well on most of these 5 things. So you might have a little more embodiment and a little less attention, and that might be fine. Or you might have a little more containment, but a little less time, and that might still be fine. But if you have very little of multiple of these, like you don't have much attention, you don't have much time, you don't have much parity, then that is a moment when you're going to say, I will not have this potentially complicated, difficult conversation with this person. Not right now. So let's talk about what the 5 things mean. The first one is time, and that's actually pretty obvious. Do I have time to have this complicated conversation? Does the person I'm talking to also have time to have this complicated conversation? If one of the 2 of us is going to have to leave in the next 10 minutes because we have to pick up a toddler at daycare, or it's time to go to work, or the shift is about to start, or whatever it is, then now is probably not the right opportunity to get into something really complicated. The second one is attention. So maybe I have tons of time and maybe you have tons of time, but each of us is also trying to juggle multiple things. So we've got an hour to talk on the phone together, except you're making dinner and I am simultaneously driving my kid to soccer practice. That is not a great time to try to have a really complicated conversation because both of us have our attention on other things. Parity has to do with kind of like the sameness or the amount of power that we have going into the conversation. And it's not talking about social power. It's not talking about, one person has more power than the other because of the type of person that they are. It's talking about situational power. Like, for example, if I'm posting something on Facebook and I've posted a meme and you are responding to that meme, in that situation, I have a little bit more power than you do. And the reason is because it's on my timeline and I can delete your comment if I want to. Another situation of parity is, let's say that you're an author and you're doing a book talk and I've come to ask a question. So you've been speaking for the last half hour and you're standing on a stage and I am standing behind a microphone in the audience asking you a question. In that moment, we don't have a lot of parity. So if we have a seriously unequal power balance, that's a reason why we might think about this might not be the moment to have this complicated conversation. The next one is containment, and this has to do with privacy and the likelihood that our conversation is going to be either overheard or possibly shared more widely. If we're on a public internet forum, there's very little containment. If we are speaking as 2 members of, I don't know, we're on the same staff, but there's a whole bunch of other employees in the cafeteria that day, then we probably don't have a lot of containment. Chances are really good that whatever I say or whatever you say is going to become public. If that's the case, people have a harder time being vulnerable with their comments, which makes sense, right? I don't want to say something that might make me sound foolish or make me sound arrogant or make me sound confused or whatever else if there are a whole bunch of people watching me. So that is a less good time to have a complicated conversation. And then the last one of these is embodiment. And embodiment has to do with how much can we see each other's body language or pick up on nonverbal signals. Embodiment if we're having a face-to-face conversation, we're in the same room together, that's probably maximum embodiment. I'm getting all of the meaning of your vocal tone and your facial expressions and all that. A little bit less than that is if we're having a video conference. I can see you from the shoulders up, but I don't know what your legs are doing, and I might not know what your arms are doing. Less than that is a voice conversation on the phone. So I'm still hearing your vocal tone, but I'm not seeing your face. And then even less than that is if we're texting or emailing back and forth. So the only thing I have is your words, and I don't have anything else in terms of the nonverbal communication. Again, time, attention, parity, containment, embodiment. This is not about saying you have to have a maximum degree of all 5 of these things to have a complicated conversation. It's about thinking through, is this the right opportunity to have this complicated conversation? And these are some of the things that might make me question whether it's actually the right opportunity. So what are some of the strengths of this particular model? I think that the biggest deal is that it gives us a way to judge when to engage. Sometimes our emotions are kind of going off the charts, and so we're not thinking rationally about, is this the actual opportunity to do this? Also, sometimes it's a great opportunity for me, but based on the 5 engagement dials, I might realize, oh, this is actually not a great opportunity for you. And so if I want this to actually be a genuine transformative kind of conversation, this is not going to be the moment to try to do that. Limitations of the model. I think the one thing that stands out for me is that it's a little tricky potentially to communicate about. Like, it's a weird thing to try to say to somebody, I want to have this conversation, but it seems like your attention is not fully on it. Or I want to have this conversation, but I need to do it at a time when I can see your facial expressions or whatever it is. There are some people that you could very easily say that to. And there are other people that it might feel a little bit awkward to try to say, yes, I want to have this conversation, but not in this moment, because it's just not this is not the opportunity. This is Monica Guzman's engagement dials. And again, it's about whether to have the conversation rather than about how. Next time we talk, I'm going to talk about something that popped up in a Braver Angels podcast from a guy named Luis Mojica. And it's another conversational approach that I've found really helpful.